try the Bell and Dragon, just up the road.
Thank you.
Beat it.
Please come in.
I saw the notice in your window.
Yes, I know.
I was wondering about a room.
It's all ready for you.
I was on my way to the Bell and Dragon, but the notice in your window just happened to catch my eye.
My dear boy, why don't you come in and out of the room?
What do you charge?
5 or 6 pence a night, including breakfast. If that's too much, I can lower it a little bit. Do you want an egg for breakfast? Eggs are expensive these days. If you don't have an egg, it'll be 6 pence less.
5 and 6 pence is fine. I'd like very much to stay here.
It's ready day and night for a gentleman, very pleasant, like you. This floor is yours, and here's your room. Mr. Weaver, Mr. Weaver, how nice. I put a water bottle between the sheets to air them out, Mr. Weaver. It's such a comfort to have a hot water bottle in a strange bed with clean sheets, don't you agree? And you may light the gas fire anytime you feel chilly.
Thank you ever so much.
Glad you appeared. I was beginning to get worried.
That's alright, you mustn't worry about me.
And what about supper, my dear? Did you manage to get any before you were here?
I'm not a bit hungry, thank you. I think I'll just go to bed early because tomorrow morning I have to get up and report to office.
Well then, I'll leave you now so that you can unpack. Before you go to bed, would you be kind enough to pop into the sitting room on the ground floor and sign the book? Everyone has to do it because it's law of the land, and we don't want to be breaking any laws at this stage in the proceedings, do we?
Gregory Temple, Christopher Mulholland.
Such charming boys.
They sound somehow familiar.
They do? How interesting.
I'm almost positive I've heard those names before somewhere. Isn't that odd? Maybe it was in the newspapers. They weren't famous in any way?
I don't think they were famous, but they were incredibly handsome, both of them. I can promise you that. They were tall and young and handsome, my dear, just exactly like you.
Look here, his last entry is over 2 years old.
It is?
Yes, indeed, and Christopher Mulholland is nearly a year before that, more than 3 years ago.
Dear me, I would never have thought how time does fly from us all, doesn't it, Mr. Wilkins?
It's Weaver, W-E-A-V-E-R.
Oh, of course it is. How silly of me. I do apologize. In 1 ear and out the other. That's me, Mr. Weaver.
You know something? Something that's really quite extraordinary about all this?
No, dear, what?
Both of these names, Mulholland and Temple, I not only seem to remember each one of them separately, so to speak, but somehow or other, in some peculiar way, they both appear to be sort of connected. As though they were both famous for the same sort of thing.
How amusing. But do come over and sit with me on the sofa and have a glass of tea before you go to bed.
You really shouldn't bother. I didn't mean you to do anything like that. I'm almost positive it was in the newspapers I saw them. I'll think of it in a second. I'm sure I will. Now wait a minute. Wait just a minute. Mulholland. Christopher Mulholland. Wasn't that the name of the Eton schoolboy that was on a walking tour through the West Country, and then all of a sudden...
Eton schoolboy? Oh no, my dear, that can't possibly be right, because my Mr. Mulholland was certainly not an Eton schoolboy. When he came to me, he was a Cambridge undergraduate.
Come on. Here's your tea already. There we are. How nice and cozy this is, isn't it? Mr. Mulholland was a great one for his tea. I never have in my life have I ever seen anyone drink as much tea as Mr. Mulholland. Oh, dear sweet Mr. Mulholland.
I suppose he left fairly recently.
Left? Oh, no, my dear boy. Mr. Mulholland never left. He's still here. Mr. Temple is also here. They're on the 4th floor, both of them together. How old are you, my dear?
17?
Ooh, 17. It's a perfect age. Mr. Mulholland was also 17, but I think he was a trifle shorter than you are. In fact, I'm sure he was. And his teeth weren't quite so white. You have the most beautiful teeth, Mr.
They've got simply masses of fillings in them at the back.
Mr. Temple, of course, was a little older when he was actually 28, and yet I never would have guessed if he hadn't told me. Never in my whole life. There wasn't a blemish on his body.
A what?
His skin, it was just like a baby's. Will you have another tea?
No, thank you.
You signed the book, didn't you?
Oh, yes.
That's good, because later on, if I happen to forget that what you were called, then I could always come down here and look it up. I still do it almost every day with Mr. Mulholland and Mr.
Temple. Gregory Temple. Excuse my asking, but haven't there been any other guests here except them in the last 2 or 3 years?
Oh no, my dear, only you.
Yes!
I'm so glad you appeared. I was This is the wrong script.